Let's jump right into this explainer because today we're going to challenge that standard textbook narrative of human discovery. You know the one, right? The story that treats the history of science like a straight line from ancient Greece directly to the European Renaissance. It's almost like the centuries in between were just some dark, quiet waiting room. But our focus today, scientific sovereignty and the intellectual legacy of Islamic civilizations, presents a totally different reality. We're looking at a deeply dynamic era where scientific inquiry wasn't just preserved on a dusty shelf, it was actively pioneered.
So let's kick things off with a question. Who really cracked the Egyptian code? I mean, history often tells us that deciphering ancient languages and really the entire European Renaissance were these sudden miracles of Western genius. We always picture these lone European scholars having these brilliant aha moments out of nowhere. But the actual reality? It's a much more fascinating hidden history. We're talking about a world filled with massive libraries, bustling global metropolises, and intensely dedicated scholars who are unlocking the secrets of the ancients literal centuries before the textbooks say it ever happened.
So, moving into Section 1, rewriting our scientific history and unpacking the myth of the sudden miracle.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the currency of knowledge and a unified intellectual motivation.
Now, you might be wondering, what exactly compelled this massive cross-continental push for learning? Well, during this era, Islamic scholars shared this unified motivation that was driven directly by theology. Basically, understanding the physical world and the history of humanity was seen as a way of understanding the divine. So when these scholars stumbled upon ancient Egyptian ruins, they didn't just see them as crumbling stone relics or, pagan monuments to just be ignored. Actually, driven by that theological mandate, they viewed these structures as sacred vaults of science. They genuinely believed the ancients possessed high knowledge, and they felt it was their absolute duty to recover it.
And to really grasp the sheer scale of this obsession, where knowledge was essentially the ultimate currency, just consider this number, 400,000. That is the estimated number of books housed in Caliph al-Hakam II's massive library. I mean, think about it. In a time when every single book was painstakingly copied by hand, amassing 400,000 volumes it's almost incomprehensible. It perfectly shows a civilization that valued the written word and data collection above pretty much everything else.
And let's look over at Al-Andalus to see how this built, because this knowledge wasn't just theoretical, it was incredibly practical. While they were busy collecting hundreds of thousands of books, the city of Cordoba was simultaneously building advanced aqueducts to provide clean water, right alongside an astonishing 50 hospitals. 50! They were actively taking all their scientific and medical studies and applying them directly to dramatically improve public health and urban infrastructure.
All right, Section 3, cracking the hieroglyphic code and the decipherment debunker.
Okay, so this directly dismantles a massive historical misconception about the deciphering of ancient languages. Standard history widely credits Jean-François Champollion with cracking the Egyptian code in the 1820s using the Rosetta Stone. We've all heard that, right? But what if I told you that 8 centuries earlier, back in the 9th century, a Muslim alchemist named Ibn Wahshiyya had already systematically decoded about half of the hieroglyphic symbols? I mean, that is just an incredible historical blind spot.
And Ibn Wahshiyya didn't just get lucky either. He utilized a rigorous methodological breakthrough, which was essentially a very early precursor to the modern scientific method. He went on to publish his highly accurate findings in a groundbreaking 9th century text called the Kitab Shawq al-Mustaham. In English, that translates to the Book of the Frenzied Desire to Understand. Honestly, that title alone perfectly captures the intense, almost obsessive drive for knowledge that completely defined this era.
Next up is Section 4, Global Hubs of Discovery and the Centers of the Golden Age. Because you have to remember, the decipherment of languages, the building of 50 hospitals, those massive libraries, these leaps weren't just happening in isolated little pockets. They were happening on a massive scale across thriving, fully interconnected metropolises. To put that into perspective, if we take a snapshot of the world around the year 1000 AD, 6 out of the top 10 largest, most advanced cities in the entire world were Islamic capitals. 6 out of 10. It really goes to show how completely these civilizations were dominating the global landscape of innovation, trade, and intellectual pursuit at the time. Let's just compare two of these immense powerhouses for a second. First, we have Cordoba in Al-Andalus. This place was known as the City of Light, boasting 10 miles of paved, illuminated streets at a time when much of Europe was quite literally still navigating in the dark and the mud. Then, over in the Abbasid Caliphate, you had Baghdad and Kufa, home to the legendary House of Wisdom. This intellectual epicenter fostered genius alchemists and scholars like our hieroglyph cracker Ibn Wahshiyya and Jabir ibn Hayyan. These cities were essentially the Silicon Valleys of their day. Moving on to Section 5, Sparking the European Renaissance and the Transfer of Knowledge.
You see, the knowledge being generated in cities like Cordoba and Baghdad didn't just stay locked up there. All of this highly organized inquiry directly fueled the next massive leap in human history. Abstract concepts we take completely for granted today, like algebra, which actually derives from the Arabic word al-jabra, were systematically developed and perfected in these very hubs. And this wasn't just some slight improvement on old math, right? It was a major methodological breakthrough that was absolutely necessary for advanced engineering and astronomy. And it was all introduced by Islamic scholars long before making its way into European hands.
And it goes even deeper than algebra. The actual mathematical bedrock of zero, derived from the Arabic cipher, was transferred from Islamic universities directly to the West. I mean, think about it. Without the concept of zero, modern mathematics, computing, and essentially all of modern science would be entirely impossible. No way around it. This concept, right alongside major medical advances, flowed directly across the Mediterranean and into Western Europe.
So, when we piece all of this together, the introduction of early scientific methods, the transfer of algebra and zero, the advanced medical knowledge flowing from networks of over 50 hospitals, and the incredible decipherment and preservation of ancient texts, the conclusion becomes undeniably clear. The European Renaissance was absolutely not some sudden miracle popping out of nowhere. It was sparked directly by this incredibly extensive, highly organized transfer of knowledge from the Islamic world.
As we rediscover the monumental impacts of figures from the sources we've explored today, like Tariq Ben Ziyad and the brilliant codebreaker Ibn Wahshiyya, it really completely shifts our perspective, doesn't it? It leaves us with one vital, provocative question to ponder. If knowledge truly is the ultimate currency, whose history are we still waiting to unearth? What other incredibly advanced, lost intellectual empires of our past are just out there, waiting for us to translate their secrets? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history you think you know.